Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you wept over your sin? When was the last time you were broken over your sin? Some of you don't even know what I'm talking about. You have not sinned against an inferior prince. You've not sinned against a small mayor from a small village. You have sinned against the Lord of glory, the King of kings, the Lord of lords. Imagine this. Here stands God on the day of creation. He looks at stars that could swallow up 1,000 of our suns. He looks at them and He says, all you stars, move yourself to this place and start in this order and move in a circle and move exactly as I tell you until I give you another word. And they all obey Him. He says, planets, pick yourself up and whirl. Make this formation at my command until I give you another word. He looks at mountains and He says, be lifted up, and they obey Him. He tells valleys, be cast down, and they obey Him. He looks at the sea and says, you will come this far, and the sea obeys. And then He looks at you and says, come, and you go, no. Look at the horrid wretchedness of sin, the vulgarity, the prostitution of sin. It is a horrid thing, not something to be trifled with. It is a beast, and it is waiting at the door, and its desire is to have you. How can you know that you're saved? Look what the Bible says. By this we know that we have come to know Him if we keep His commandments. If we keep on keeping His commandments, we know that we know Him. If we persevere in His commandments, we know that we know Him. And then He goes on and says the one who's opposite doesn't know Him. Now I want you to look at something for a moment. What does it mean to keep His commandments? Does it mean to walk in sinless perfection? No. Again, it is a style of life. If we were to take your life out and film it every day, 24 hours a day, would we see a style of life that desired to know God's commandments, desired to obey them, was growing in victory and obedience, and was also broken when it didn't obey? Would we see that in your life? Is your lifestyle marked by a keen interest in God's commandments and a desire to obey them? The Christian ought to walk as Jesus walked. And you say, Brother Paul, you've gone too far now. Who can walk like Jesus walked? Well, let me give you an illustration to try to explain to you what I mean. When I was a little boy, my father was a very big man, very smart man. And like all little boys, I wanted to be just like him. Now up north, we get big snows. And my dad would come into my room at 5 in the morning, even when I was a little boy, and say, Paul boy, get up. And we would walk out there in the snow. And the one thing I can always remember doing is my father would take these big strides and leave these footprints in the snow. I wanted to walk like my dad walked. And so I would try to stretch my legs out and put my foot in his footprint. You can imagine I was stretching out farther than I could ever go. You can imagine I looked ridiculous, and you can imagine I fell down. But you will also know by looking at that picture that the greatest desire in my heart was to walk like he walked. You could tell looking at that little boy, he wanted to be like his dad, even though sometimes he didn't look anything like him. Let me ask you, what's the greatest desire in your heart? Is your great desire to walk like he walked? To be like he was? Is that your great desire? Are you seeking to put your foot in his footprint? Listen to me, man. Listen to me, woman, because if you're not, be afraid. This is the exam. We have around us an empire of flesh and muscle and beauty and hair. And it'll all rot in a tomb. The wealth and the glamour and the glitter and all the things in which people are investing their lives will all rot